topic which I would like to discuss here in my talk is regarding the influence or the relation of Paninian grammar with the non-Paninian grammars as well as uh, with the grammars of Pali. My basic training was in the Paninian grammar, but then when I started studying grammars of Pali, I also had to study other non-Paninian systems, and that kind of brought me to a better understanding of what is happening in the tradition. We usually tend to start with Panini and end with Panini. I mean, that's what has happened in the tradition of Paninian studies. I'm happy that I mean we acknowledge, of course, as students of Paninian grammar, that Paninian grammar has a lot to gain from his from the earlier traditions. So as we all know that Panini has already mentioned by name a few of the earlier grammarians, and as shown in the first presentation by Pramod Sharma ji, that in many other places one can actually guess that some of the sutras are coming from the earlier tradition. Actually, whenever we are talking about any shastra, we see that it's a tradition which is an ongoing tradition. And in the field of knowledge, in a way, there could not be or can't be any last word, so to say, because are always thinking, and this is a sign of a human being, an intelligent human being, and and the science of grammar is no exception to it. As we all know that after Panini, Vartikara has made his suggestions and also pointed out some of the problems or difficulties in the Paninian sutra formation, as well as some of the other difficulties or lacuna. And even Bhashyakara has discussed these in detail in his Mahabhashya. But there has been this kind of a devotion for Panini. So Panini became a subject of devotion for our tradition. And therefore, whatever Panini has done, we think that there is no need for us to make a change even of a single letter. So as we have seen, I mean, now forget about the sutra, but one has to even retain whatever is there in the sutras. We cannot change even a single letter there. So I think that Vartikara was, in a way, he was much more bold than the Vashyakara. I mean, he was suggesting the changes when saying that iti vaktavyam, and so on. Patanjali, of course, acknowledged many of these suggestions, but finally concluded that the sutra should be accepted as it is. When we see further in the tradition, I mean, after Patanjali, of course, we are not aware of any of the commentaries in the Paninian tradition. But during that period, I mean, during, we can say, Patanjali's Mahabhashya and then the Kashika Vritti, we basically see the rise of other grammatical traditions, which include Sarvabhairavan's Katantra Vyakaranam and Chandragomin's Shabda Lakshanam. Now, two of these grammatical traditions, I mean, they follow a different path. I mean, especially the Katantra Vyakaran. So the main purpose was, of course, simplicity. And in the Katantra tradition, the commentator, Trilochana Dasa, he rather kind of, in a way, says that we are here talking about the Artha Laghava instead of Shabda Laghava. And this is the approach which the Katantra tradition has taken. And what we see, there is another viewpoint which we see in this other tradition, that instead of making more lakshanas, more rules, they believe in providing more examples. So by giving more general rules and providing more examples. So they say that you know, in any way, if you make more sutras like what Panini did, around 4,000 rules, and as against that, the Katantra has 1,400 rules. But they supply the examples for the broader categories through which even the specific categories or particular verbal usages can be explained. So whether to give importance to Lakshana or whether to give importance to the Udaharanas and the Lakshyas, and through the Lakshyas explain the language. I mean, this was one of the issues which was in the tradition. And I think what we see in the Katantra tradition and the Chandra tradition is that, in their opinion, uh, instead of making more rules, one can actually explain the features of language by providing more examples. So, and in any case, we are in a way, I mean, the Laghava Charcha, I mean, the Gaurava Laghava Charcha is understood in a different manner. Similarly, now when we go further, what we see in the Chandra tradition is that Chandragomin, in fact, was the first, I would say, the reviser of Panini's Ashtadhyayi. Initially, the Chandra Vyakarana is not really considered as a separate tradition. I mean, but later on, it also developed its own commentarial tradition, and then we started talking about a separate Chandra grammatical tradition. But it seems that what Chandragomin is trying to achieve is a revision of Panini's Ashtadhyayi, as he claims in his opening stanza that he says, Lakhu Vispashta Sampurnam Kriyate Shabda Lakshanam. So he is using these three adjectives for his own grammar, where he says that he's trying to make this grammar more concise, more clear, and complete. So concise, clear, and complete. That's what he is trying to achieve through his grammar. And what he did while composing his grammar is that he tried to rearrange some of the sutras in such a way that by taking advantage of sandhi and so on, he could reduce the size of the sutras to achieve brevity. Second thing is, like, what he did is he, in order to achieve the Vispashtartha, in order to make it more Vispashta, he removed some of the ambiguities which were there in Panini's grammar. I mean, in one of the earlier papers, we also heard about this very well-known problem in the Pratyahara Sutras with the two nakaras. So he tried to kind of get rid of some of these problems and some of the ambiguities from the Paninian Sutras. And the third thing is that he also tried to make it complete by incorporating suggestions given in the Vartikas and the Bhashya. So, and at the same time, Chandragomin, of course, he belongs to the Buddhist tradition or the Buddhist philosophy. So he has his own way of looking at language and the way to write grammar of a language. So he brings in that kind of a view as well. So instead of having a separate Karaka and Vibhakti categories, what he does is that he straight away connects the Karaka categories with the Vibhakti. And for example, now in the Karaka section, we also had one presentation on that. So for example, if you look at the Karaka Sutras in the Paninian tradition, after Dhruvamapaya Padanam, we have several sutras. And the Bhashyakara even says that actually there is no need of all these following sutras. They are rather prapancha. So, I mean, Kashikakara also acknowledges this fact. But they do not dare to, of course, I mean, say that these sutras are obsolete and they are not ready to do the pratyakhyana of the sutras. But what we see in the Chandra tradition, I mean, what Chandragomin did is he really actually introduced some of the categories. So instead of Dhruvam Apaya Apadanam, he rather says Avadhi. He uses the concept of Avadhi and provides an explanation of the Apadana Karaka, which he basically calls Avadhi, and tries to deal with many of the issues which are related to this categorization. What we see here in the Paninian tradition is that, later grammarians who followed Panini also came up with their own proposals and tried to suggest better ways of dealing with the issues. Now, when we are talking about using Paninian models for several applications in terms of may it be like creating tools, or may it be in terms of in terms of creating a comprehensive model for maybe either for machine translation or some other purposes. I think we need to really take into account these later revisions of Paninian grammar, because I think these grammarians who followed, I mean, it is true that they did not get much popularity when we are looking at, I mean, from our today's perspective. And today, all these other grammatical traditions are not so popular, but there was a time when these grammatical traditions were much popular. I mean, grammar like that of Katantra even went beyond the boundaries of India, and had influenced the grammars of Pali, for example, and was translated into Tibetan languages and so on. So also in the case with the Chandra Vyakarana, it was also studied outside India and had influenced the grammar of Pali, and was also translated into many of the languages such as Tibetan and Sinhalese and Burmese. So, I mean, popularity would be one criteria, but I think we have to look at a more from a more scientific point of view. That if you really want to have more accomplished grammar of Sanskrit, then I think we cannot simply stop at Panini. This does not mean that we have no respect for Panini. Of course, he has done a fundamental work, but to consider that that's the end, and there is no further progress, I think that would be more illusory, and then we'll be in a way deceiving ourselves. So, in my opinion, in order to have more accomplished grammar of Sanskrit, we really also have to see the proposals of the later Sanskrit grammarians, and especially I would like to draw the attention of scholars to what we see in the Chandra grammatical system, which also has a rich grammatical, I mean, commentarial tradition, which are unfortunately not yet edited and brought in the form of critical editions. Myself, with two of my colleagues, we are working on the editions of the Chandra Panchika, and we see that there is a dialogue. There is a dialogue between the Paninian tradition and the Chandra tradition. So what this Chandra Panchika text by Ratnashri Jnana from 10th century is a Sinhalese scholar. What we see in his commentary is that they are taking the opinions of Kashika and the Nyasa, the Purva Paksha, and reacting to that and providing, I mean, defending the Chandra tradition against those objections raised by the Paninian tradition. So what we see is that in the commentaries of the Chandra tradition, as well as in the commentaries of the Katantra tradition, like the Durga Vritti, Durga Tika, and the rest, we have a continuous dialogue, and this dialogue is basically enriching our understanding of the Sanskrit language. So my simple proposal and submission is that as scholars of Sanskrit and scholars of Paninian grammar, we have to take a broader outlook and not to consider that everything ends with Panini or with the Trimuni Vyakarana. We do have advances, and they may not be popular, but actually we should have a courage to have a look at them and to really examine them on their merit. And wherever we see that there are better solutions, I think we should not shy away from incorporating them, because that is ultimately going to improve our understanding and application of Paninian grammar. So, as Bhartrihari said, Pradnya Vivekam Labhate Bhinnai Ragama Darshanai Kiyadva Shakyam Unnetum Swatarkam Anudhavata. So, instead of that Swatarkam Anudhavata, I'll just say that, I mean, similarly, we cannot really achieve much if we are just sticking to our own tradition. We should rather take a broader view. And I'm fortunate that due to my study of Pali and other non-Paninian grammatical systems, my vision about Panini's grammar has broadened, and I thought that with all respect to Panini and to all honors to him for what he has composed, but as a science of grammar, because science of grammar, as we know, that is a Sarva Parishadam Shastra, right? It's a Shastra which benefits all the different sects, all the different branches of knowledge. So we have to take a more broader view. There's not much time to talk about the influence of these grammars on Pali, but only thing which I would like to tell you is that, I mean, initially when I started my PhD work on the comparative study of the Paninian and the Pali grammars, I was under the impression that Paninian grammar was a grammar which was influencing the Pali grammars. But then through my study, I realized that this influence was not so direct, but rather it was an indirect influence. And the models which the Pali grammarians adopted for writing their grammars was for the Kachayana grammar, the model was the Katantra. And for the Moggallana grammar, which was composed in the 12th century, the model was that of the Chandra Vyakaran. So what we see is that, I mean, the Paninian grammar, through this other non-Paninian grammatical systems, has kind of influenced the grammars of Pali and also Prakrit. And to understand this kind of relationship, we yet to study a lots of material which is still lying, in the manuscript forms or in the form of books, but it is still kind of requiring more. I would say that more unbiased, unprejudiced kind of study of this system. And I think what we need to do is, as I said, that to take all this together and move ahead in time to have a more accomplished system of grammar for Sanskrit language. I hope that the scholars will pay some attention to what I've suggested in my talk. So thank you very much once again to all of you. Thanks a lot.